My world shattered the day I lost my husband, Mark. The grief was a physical weight, a constant ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. We had been married for 12 years, a love story that started in college and grew stronger with every passing day. He wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend, my confidant, my everything. His sudden passing from a heart attack left a void that I knew would never be filled. In the haze of those first few weeks, I clung to the memories we made and the family we built. I thought, at the very least, I still had his parents, John and Mary. Throughout our marriage, they had treated me like their own daughter. We spent holidays together, celebrated birthdays, and they were the first people we called with good news. Mark was their only child, and I believed our shared loss would only bring us closer. I couldn't have been more wrong. The change was subtle at first. Their phone calls became less frequent. When I invited them over for dinner, hoping to feel a sense of normalcy, they always had an excuse. I tried to be understanding. They were grieving too, and everyone processes loss differently. I gave them space, assuming time would heal the growing distance between us. The real shock came about 6 months after Mark's death. I was having a coffee with Sarah, a close family friend who also knew my in-laws well. She looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat before she finally spoke. She told me she had overheard John talking to his brother. He was boasting about how they had finally cut the cord and rewritten their will, ensuring their entire estate would go to a distant cousin instead of me. He said, and I'll never forget these words, "She's not our blood. Mark is gone, so our obligation to her is gone too." Hearing that felt like a second wave of loss. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined. I went home and cried for hours. These were the people who held my hands at my wedding, the people who called me their daughter. How could they be so cold? It wasn't about the money. I never expected a dime from them. It was the deliberate act of erasing me, of treating my 12-year marriage to their son as a temporary contract that had simply expired. For weeks, I was consumed by a mix of anger and sorrow. I replayed every holiday, every shared laugh, searching for signs that their love had been conditional all along. Part of me wanted to confront them, to scream and demand an explanation, but what would that accomplish? They had already made their feelings clear, so I decided to focus on rebuilding my own life, piece by painful piece. I started therapy, reconnected with my own friends and family, and poured my energy into my work. I was determined not to let their cruelty define my future. About a year later, I received a certified letter in the mail. It was from a lawyer representing my in-laws. The letter was formal and cold, stating that they intended to sell their home and were requesting I sign some documents to clear up a minor title issue. My heart pounded in my chest as I read it. A minor title issue. I knew exactly what they were talking about, and it was anything but minor. Here's the part of the story they had conveniently forgotten. About 5 years before Mark passed away, my in-laws were facing a serious financial crisis. John's business had failed, and they were on the brink of foreclosure. They were about to lose the house they had lived in for over 40 years, the very home where Mark grew up. They came to us, embarrassed and desperate. They needed a significant amount of money to save their home, and they had been denied loans everywhere else. Mark and I didn't hesitate. We had been saving diligently for a down payment on our own dream home, but his parents' well-being came first. We sat down with them and our lawyer and worked out a solution. We would pay off their entire remaining mortgage and all their debts. In exchange, to protect our investment and give us security, they would sign the house over to us. We became the legal owners of the property. The agreement was clear. They could live in the house, rent-free, for the rest of their lives. We would handle the property taxes and major repairs. It was never about making a profit. It was about keeping a roof over their heads. We had a private contract drawn up and legally filed, and they happily signed it, thanking us with tears in their eyes for saving them. After Mark died, I continued to pay the property taxes and even paid for a new roof last winter, never once asking them for anything. I honored our agreement, even after they had so callously discarded me from their lives. I assumed they just forgot about the ownership details in their grief and subsequent plotting. Or maybe they thought I was too grief-stricken or too naive to remember the legal arrangement we had made. Now, holding their lawyer's letter, I saw their plan. They wanted to sell the house, my house, from under me, pocket the money, and leave me with nothing but a minor title issue to sign away. The audacity was breathtaking. All the hurt and anger I had been suppressing came rushing back, but this time it was mixed with a cold, clear sense of purpose. They had shown me who they truly were. Now it was my turn. I contacted my own lawyer, the same one who had drafted the original agreement. I explained the situation, forwarding him the letter I had received. His response was immediate. He confirmed what I already knew. The house was legally mine, free and clear. Their request was baseless, and their attempt to sell the property was fraudulent. I had a choice to make. I could have been vindictive. I could have started eviction proceedings immediately. Legally, I would have been within my rights to kick them out and sell the house myself. The thought was tempting, a flash of righteous anger that pictured their shock and desperation. It would be the perfect revenge for the pain they had caused me. But then I thought of Mark. I thought of the man I loved, a man who adored his parents despite their flaws. He would have been heartbroken to see this happen. Revenge might feel good for a moment, but it wouldn't bring him back. It wouldn't heal the wound in my heart. And it wasn't who I wanted to be. So, I chose a different path. My lawyer drafted a response. It was polite, professional, and devastatingly effective. The letter gently reminded their lawyer of the legally binding agreement from 5 years prior, attaching a copy for their convenience. It detailed our full ownership of the property and noted that I had been faithfully paying all associated taxes and maintenance costs, as agreed. The letter then laid out my terms. I acknowledged their right to live in the house for the rest of their lives, rent-free, as per our original contract. That promise, I wrote, was one I intended to keep, in memory of my husband. However, it also made it crystal clear that they had absolutely no right to sell the property, as they were not the owners. Any attempt to do so would be met with swift legal action. Finally, it stated that all future communication regarding the property should be directed through our respective lawyers. The silence that followed was deafening. There were no more letters, no angry phone calls. Sarah told me later that the news hit them like a ton of bricks. Their lawyer had apparently confirmed my claim was ironclad, and they were left with no recourse. They had overplayed their hand, blinded by greed, and it had backfired spectacularly. They got to keep their home, the one my husband and I had saved for them. They could live out their days in comfort and security, but they had to live with the knowledge that the roof over their heads belonged to the daughter-in-law they had tried to cast aside. They had to live with the fact that their security was dependent on the grace of the woman they had so thoroughly disrespected. I never spoke to them directly again. The bond was broken beyond repair. But I found a strange sense of peace in the outcome. I didn't stoop to their level. I upheld the promise I made with my husband, honoring his memory in a way that felt right to me. I took control of my life and stood up for myself, not with anger, but with dignity and strength. They wanted to erase me, but in the end, they only proved how essential I had been all along. I learned that true power isn't about getting revenge, it's about holding onto your integrity when others lose theirs. And that's a lesson worth more than any inheritance. Thank you for listening.